This is the Worship Team Training Podcast with your host and training director, Brannon Dempsey. Worship Team Training provides live workshops and online resources to help inspire, create, and transform the leading of worship. Now, here's your host, Brannon Dempsey.
Hey, you are looking at Kim Bontrager. She is with us today. Welcome, folks. Welcome back to the Worship Team Training Podcast Hangout. So glad to have you today. We are live right now as we're both on video here at YouTube and also Facebook Live, as well as our audio podcast that you're listening to with iTunes and also on Spreaker. So we want to say big thanks to all you guys following us. Check us back out at iTunes and also Spreaker.com, and be sure to follow us. Welcome, welcome. Great to have you. Today is the December the 7th show with our fantastic special guest, Kim Bontrager, and it's so great to have her today. Hope that you guys are doing great. Man, but isn't it crazy? That is exactly what we were talking about on today's show, is the Christmas crazy. Do you find yourself running in circles right now, getting everything ready for Christmas? Everything else, we're about to jump and dive into those wrapping gifts of craziness. So without further ado, let's welcome our guest, Kim Bontrager, worship leader out from Wichita, Kansas, and she's returning guest. How are you today, Kim? Great to see you.
Hey, Brandon. Hey, everybody. I am doing fine. Great to be here. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, it's great to have you back. Thanks so much for not being scared off the first time.
It would have to be a lot worse than it was last time.
That's good.
I'd be completely frightened to come back.
That's great. Well, I would say I was kind of frightened myself of myself. But anyway,
it's only fair.
Yeah, it has to be fair. You know, you can't do it any other way. But Kim, it's so great to have you. Kim's a great friend. We've been dialoguing over the past year. I think it's been maybe 9 months, since we had her on. Just such a great person. Rich Kirkpatrick, it's his fault that we've had Kim on the show the first time. But Kim comes with a great wealth of information, and being a worship leader for over 20 years, she leads at her church, and just fantastic lady. And so we were talking, Kim, about this very topic of Christmas. And, as many of folks are getting revved up right now with services already, how do we, that's kind of the topic of the day, is how do we keep, I guess not our sanity, but you and I talked about this on the phone earlier, how do we come away from this or deal with the stress mess of Christmas? What's your take on that?
I have thoughts on it. I've been thinking about this since we've been talking about it. And if my family that lives in my house knew that we were having this conversation today, they would be in hysterics. Like I have anything to offer, because they see it happen to me every year. And I keep thinking there has to be a magic way to get through the season without completely losing my mind and without becoming grumpy to an unparalleled level with the people around me.
Right. Right.
But I guess this year, what has occurred to me more than any other time is that everyone feels extra stressed this time of year, with extra stuff going on for your family. If you have kids, there's all kinds of school things, and you have to go to parties and work issues and family stuff. For some people, family time is really stressful at Christmas, and all the shopping, and if you're hosting people, all of that, it's just insane. And then I think when you work in a church, you layer upon all of those cultural expectations, you layer church expectations on top of that. And so, it's pretty clear why worship leaders might be prone to completely lose it during this season. And I think a lot of it has to do with expectations that we carry. I think that's, I think digging into that a little bit is the best way to sort of figure out where that pressure's coming from and try to deal with it in a little bit more healthy way. Right.
And so how do you, I heard this and I forgot where it came from. I think one of our team members, Laura Marriott, we were talking just, I think yesterday, And she said she was, which is really awesome, she's writing a thank you note to her worship leader, just in general, just say thank you. And at the very bottom of it, she said, I hope that you have a great Christmas, day after too, So is that what a lot of, is that how we feel as worship leaders? Like, it's Christmas for everybody else, but yet for me, not so much.
It is super easy to fall into that.
Yeah.
And I am fighting that right now. It just feels like Christmas is a series of big boxes to check.
Yeah.
And as I work my way through that list, I feel the pressure get lighter and lighter. I wish it didn't feel like that. I haven't figured out a way to solve that because it's just true. Depending on the church you're in, every weekend in December probably carries some degree of extra pressure compared to other weekends in the year. And so it's just, okay, cool. We've got one weekend done. Check. Okay. There's only 3 more. I think like it is conscious work for me to try to stop viewing this role that I have during this month as just a task list. It is conscious work for me this year to keep my eyes open to what God is doing in our church community, because he's been doing a lot this year that's new. And the temptation I have is to think, well, all that just pauses in December because everybody wants their happy Christmas music. Everybody wants to just feel good about church.
Yeah.
And so I just have to produce these things that people feel good about. When actually I think it's possible God could continue working during the Christmas season. I mean, possibly the very reason we celebrate Christmas is the very reason we have this connection with God to begin with. So
yeah,
he could keep working even though we have to sing all the happy Jesus Christmas songs. And I think just being aware of that and like even praying in that direction, asking God to help you see where he's still working in your worship services, rather than viewing them as a set of expectations you're trying to meet. That's become really important to me this year. Yeah.
I like what you said about expectations, and which are very important, because I want to get your take more on that. I want to go back real quick. I like what you said. We're having to do Christmas music. It's like kind of like because everybody wants to hear it. It's almost like we as worship leaders and teams, we put our own brains on autopilot, but so does the church, right? In some regard. And I like what you said. It's helping them see, but we have to get through that expectation part. So how does one, you talk about to be honest with yourself and know about where the pressure is coming from. Can you talk a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Yeah, I'll speak out of my own situation. There are expectations that are on this season that come from my senior pastor, executive pastor, and what they'd like to see happen in worship services in December. But then it's super easy for the other hundreds of people who go here to make comments to me about, hey, I hope we sing that song, and hey, how are you going to top what you did last year?
Right.
And, oh, I really hope that we're going to see da-da-da-da-da. And it's just expectation piled on top of each other. And it's important for me to weight those appropriately. Like I work very well with our senior pastor on a weekly basis. So when he expresses, I really like the service to do this, I'm paying attention to that.
Yeah.
When every other person who attends the church comes with a set of expectations, it's not weighted the same as the senior pastor. But you still have to deal with those conversations with grace and give answers with kindness. And I like to try to find a way to kind of humorously evade answering.
Humorously evade. How does that? Does that involve a costume or what?
If there's blinking lights in the room, it's helpful. If there's,
something fell at the stage. Sorry, I gotta go.
Maybe that's why it's good to have live animals involved, because then they can always pull the attention away. But so there's dealing with like the expectations of like the people who are actually in authority over us and the people who are a part of the church body. But a big thing is also just the expectations we put on ourselves. And I hear this sometimes in worship leaders and in my own brain. I hear it. How are we going to top what we did last year question? Because we want to be creative all the time. We don't want to do the same exact thing. I think for a lot of creative people, that's just a place where you live. Like, you don't want to repeat the same steps you took last year.
Yeah.
Where a lot of people are lovers of tradition and they kind of want to see the same thing every year. And so then there's tension. We've got this, I have to do it different than I did last year. How do I do it better? How do I do it bigger? And you may be hearing from your church, we just want the same thing. We just want the same thing. We want to feel warm and fuzzy. We want church to feel like drinking hot chocolate. We want, and like, weighting that and measuring that out is tough. Yeah. I think we got to be a little kinder to ourselves. I don't think it really should be about topping what we've done in the years past.
And why shouldn't it be?
Because that should just not ever be the motivation for how we put together a worship service. This year on my team, we have been very intentionally trying to talk about and notice what does it mean to lead our church in a more deep way, not so much in a more like flashy way. And that continues in this season, but I'm not trying to out flash what we did last year, because that's an endless proposition.
Yeah.
I mean, in very practical terms, we have finite resources. We're not a flashy place. We're not flashy musicians. There's an end to what we can do production level wise. So I would rather pay attention to content and inviting people to engage in deeper ways and making it beautiful with the people that we have, rather than how do we make it bigger.
Well, but if it's bigger and we can make it better, won't more people worship and won't more people come to Jesus?
I don't know. Have you ever been to Trans-Siberian Orchestra? Have you ever been to Trans-Siberian Orchestra's Christmas show?
I have not.
No?
I've heard about it.
Some of your viewers and listeners will have been. It's an amazing experience, and people should go at least once. But that is a great example of an organization that has apparently endless finances to put into shebang and boom. Yeah. And they do it very well, very talented. Does it mean more people would pay attention like if we could do that in churches, does it mean more people would pay attention to the Christmas message?
Right.
I don't know that that's
but isn't that what we try to achieve every Sunday anyway? Is there any difference?
More engagement?
No, I mean, try to make each service better. Don't we? If we're talking about that with Christmas, don't we do that anyway each Sunday? Does that change?
I think there's always room to improve what we do. I just don't like to enter the planning stages with how can I top last time, because I feel like that's a bad motivation when it's just how can I, yeah. If that's my motivation, I think over time I'm eroding away the actual goal, which is to create an experience, an atmosphere where my church gathers to connect with God. I think approaching that on a weekly basis and during Christmas with how do I top last time will start to take precedence in my mind over how is our church actually responding and what do they need, in order to respond more deeply this time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. That means each year the elephants should be getting bigger. And that way, because they make bigger accidents, and then you can have your humorous, diversion to whoever you're trying to talk to. Clean up on church aisle 7, please. But
right.
Seriously. Right. But no, I think you're right all about that. Can you talk a little bit about, you say the expectations that we put on ourselves, or how can we put expectations that are more realistic? You and I just before the show were talking about how you have to fill a spot for that one missing musician. You were just telling me that before we went on the air. And I said, well, I'm going through the same thing. So then how do we approach things that need to stay realistic in order to achieve them?
I think it's important for us to keep in mind our own priorities as humans, as Jesus followers. So if any other month of the year, I want to keep things aligned along the priority of my own connection with God, my connection with and care for my family, my attention and energy I can give to my ministry, my own personal physical health. Like if those are a list of priorities in March, April, May, June, July, those should remain my list of priorities in December. So that, if I can keep that in mind, and draw some time boundaries accordingly, I think that helps us keep expectations realistic. I say this after coming through a season a few years ago of just working hours and hours and hours every December to try to accomplish and make and do and make it better and better and better and more beautiful and bigger and realizing that I would get to December 26th and be finally sitting with my family, feeling like I had missed everything. Like I missed everything. Here we are on the 26th. I'm a shell of a human who has eaten badly, not slept enough, created what I thought were good experiences that everybody had and said, yeah, that was a great church experience. And now they're all home with their families, basking in that, and I'm a shell of a human. So that is not the goal. I think learn from your patterns in the past, draw your boundaries, capitalize on the people around you in your ministry, the gifts around you, invite people in to what you're trying to create, give more away to those people, but stay in line with the priorities you have for your life and that you have for your family. Don't throw those away during December. Yeah.
Good word there. And I really like what you said, too, about the priority. How does that go into, the thought of that God, you kind of alluded to this earlier, that God doesn't stop during Christmas.
Right. It's super easy to just put everything on pause that has been happening in your church family, in your ministry, and personally. Like, whatever journey God is taking you on personally this year in how you connect with Him, how He speaks to you, somehow what has happened to me in the past is when we hit like that weekend after Thanksgiving, activity goes into high gear, goes into different gear, and I lose all of that. Like, for me, it's, I really love, it really works for me to just have like time in solitude, do a little Bible reading, do a little journaling, do a little thinking. Like, I have to have that alone. No one's going to interrupt it time. And that's how I connect with God on a personal level. Totally goes out the window. As though like the whole thing is just on pause and we just have to make December happen. And then in January, we can hit unpause on all of that connection, all of that work that God was doing, and we pick up then. It's just hysterical, really, when you think about that we, in the position of creating experiences for other people to worship, like completely ignore how we have been connecting with God, because this workload has gotten so big, and the family the family workload, everything takes over. So I just think it's important to keep drawing the line. Like, November, December, January, they connect just like all the other months in the year. Yeah. And God hasn't stopped. People who were in pain in October over things happening in their family still are. Like, people on your team who were in some kind of pain still are. In fact, it's worse now. Yeah. People who are dealing with job loss and financial, it's worse now. It hasn't gone away. Like, all of that caregiving, all of that compassion, it's still needed. It's still right there. So I think just having our eyes open, and it's almost a discipline of keeping our spiritual connection with God the same through this month as it is through the rest of the year. Well,
it has to be. I mean, when you think about, you just said we're so busy creating services for other people in the church. I like what you said, the church experience. Yeah. It's not a God encounter. It's a church experience, right? Right. And that affects us. We're so busy pouring out. We're not really diving deep into what you say here, the community. And it's like, I found myself even this morning, Christmas is on my mind, everything else. And I found myself this morning, I was going through a hallway at going to an office here, and I was looking for a certain room, and a lady just came out the door out of nowhere, didn't even see her, and here I am, I'm in my own world thinking, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to go down this hallway, and she comes down, she's like, well, hello, like if she's known me all my life, and I've never even seen this lady. She's like, how are you doing? And I'm looking, I thought she's talking to somebody behind me, I'm looking around, and no, you're it, Brandon, she's talking to you. And I said, I said to her, you're awfully nice to greet me that way. Thank you so much. And she goes, well, that's my job. She said, where are you looking? Who are you looking for? And it just kind of was like, wow, that's a little bit of reality, isn't it? It's like, talk about that. You talk about how, instead of maybe just is not just sharing the love within the church experience, whatever you want to call it, but sharing the love of Jesus in our communities, do you believe that one can do that even like standing in line at Target?
I've heard it's possible. I've heard, and I believe deep in my heart, that one can show love to other people in line at Target. One can show love to other people in traffic.
Is that parking spaces included?
Yeah, I think it's possible. I mean, we talk about Christmas miracles all the time. There you go. But yeah, I think you're right. I think even just asking God to give you those opportunities on a daily basis during this season, especially, to just where's an opportunity where you can do what that lovely woman did for you, just give you a smile on your face because somebody greeted you cheerfully. Where can we be doing that, like in our normal life, that reminds us that the little building that we're obsessed with having to work inside on during Christmas isn't the whole world. And outside of that building are where the people are that need to hear this message and need to experience the love that is behind the story of Christmas. So I think we of all people should be actively praying for, how can I just be nice to someone at Target? How can I just extend courtesy to someone who doesn't deserve it? Again, it's another way to just keep our eyes on what's really most important.
Yeah, that's awesome. Kim, thanks. I'm just thinking about all the things that have been happening even since the election time. We've seen all these riots. We've seen people getting mad over Facebook, people that you are friends with in your family that, now everyone's talking about is how bad things are. But this is the real world that we're living in. And so I love what you're saying about, seeking God in all these moments of real life on a continuing basis, like what you said, throughout November, October, going backwards all the way through December. So I love that. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. I think it also helps if you have kids.
Oh, man.
They force
you.
They tend to force you to be like grounded in normal life. And as they get older and see you possibly lose your mind every December and bring up the fact that they know they're going to lose you as a human during December, it helps you.
It loses you. That's terrific. I love that. It's like what you said, you want to have your quiet time, and then all of a sudden they enter the room and it's like, well, but those are moments of life, though. It's not, that hits me it hits me every day. It's not about just going through the motions of your timetable through the week and your schedule. It's about living in those trenches, living in those hard times, and enjoying the hardship, so to speak.
Oh, right.
And Christmas is no different.
Totally. It just feels different.
Because we call it Christmas, and everybody wants to watch Charlie Brown and feel good about everything you just said earlier. The hot cocoa, I love it. I mean, you're so right on. I
mean, I want that too. That's the great irony, is that I want this special warm fuzzy feeling as well, and I don't know exactly what I'm chasing, and I know that the experiences I'm creating at church aren't necessarily going to fulfill that for me, because I'm behind the curtain and see the mechanics. And it is just crazy. It's crazy, the cultural, emotional expectations we carry into this. But I think worship leaders are in a unique position to continue to proclaim truth and invite people to do that, and invite people to embrace this story in new ways or old ways, and continue living with this eye towards God being real, and God incarnate, and God interacting with us on a daily basis. I think that's our job. So we have to live that out every other month. Fighting that expectation game and that cultural, all those cultural expectations it's hard, but it's the task in front of us for this month. Awesome. Great work, Kim. Kim, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been a pleasure. Hey, you're welcome. It's been great to talk with you. I'm happy to be here, and I hope we all make it to January 2nd. This year, our end goal, January 2nd, right? Yes. I love it. Yes, we will. And then after January 2nd, we'll evaluate if we're actually going to have Kim come back on the show, depending on whom she may have scared during this broadcast, but I don't think so. I think so. Totally fair question. Yes. That's right. No, we're going to have you back. We're going to have Kim back. It's going to be fantastic. So again, Kim, thanks so much for being here with us today. You're most welcome. Thank you for inviting me. You bet. And guys, we got a full schedule coming out back at you when we do return in January. So we'd like for you guys to, share this broadcast out with a friend. Those who are going through this Christmas craziness, as Kim put it in an email to me this morning, the Christmas crazy sauce. I love that. So share this with your folks out there, somebody who needs to hear it. And also, if you need that extra support as something that we can do for you, check out our mentoring program that we have at worshipteamtraining.com/mentoring. You can find more information there. And also, when you're there, be sure to sign up for the ebook and our newsletter weekly. You can see the yellow button at the right-hand corner, top of the website. You can also find it here at YouTube. And thanks by listening to our podcast, Facebook Live, and Periscope. You can find the subscription button there as well. But Kim, again, thank you so much for being with us today. You're welcome. Awesome. And guys, to you, we say Merry Christmas, Happy New Year if we don't see you earlier. We love you guys and continue to see and work with God as He's working through you during this Christmas. We love you. Have an awesome and safe time with your family and your churches. We'll see you guys back very soon. Love you. Bye.
This has been a Worship Team Training broadcast and digital production with your host and training director, Brannon Dempsey. Worship Team Training provides live workshops and online resources to help inspire, create, and transform the leading of worship. We'll see you again right here on worshipteamtraining.com.